Welcome to the Soul Anarchist Podcast.
To the Soul Anarchist Podcast.
The Soul Anarchist Podcast.
A show about living life
on your own terms.
A show about living life on your own terms.
And here's your host,
Paul Duane.
Hey there, fellow Soul Anarchists. Welcome to today's show. Oh, wow. I know I start out every episode saying this is the best conversation I've ever had in my whole life. Oh my God. This one is really good. My guest today is an American pornographic film actor, producer, sex educator, motivational speaker, and entrepreneur. Buck Angel, who happens to be a trans male, refuses to toe the line of the super left and finds himself at odds with a lot of the very ultra leftist narratives of the day. And he gets into a lot of trouble for his unconventional points of view. I've been watching him take a lot of heat on Twitter specifically, and as I've watched it unfold, I've just thought, I have to meet this guy. I have to talk to him. I hopefully can interview him and share him with my friends and my audience, because this guy's brilliant. So I'm so excited to introduce you. But first, a bit of housekeeping. Do you like to read? Are you doing much of that these days? I love books. I love other people's ideas. I love going on a journey. I love expanding my mind. And I am a terrible reader, but I'm a good listener. And so Audible has been a godsend for me. I love Audible. Have you ever done audiobooks? If you have, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you should check it out. I'm an Audible affiliate, so I can hook you up. If you want to try this really cool service out, I can get you a free month of service and a free audiobook of your choosing. Just use my promotional link at paulduane.net/audible. That's PAULDUANE.net/audible, paulduane.net/audible. And you can get a free month of service and a free audiobook on us. And by the way, when you do that, when you sign up with the Audible link, it helps the show too. So you can share that with your friends, by the way. Hook them up too. All right, let's get down to it. So if you don't already know who Buck Angel is, I highly suggest you press pause and go visit the show notes over at soulanarchist.com, the show website. That's SOUL, Soul Anarchist, ANARCHIST.com, soulanarchist.com. Find the Buck Angel episode, and it should be very easy to find. And then just go see who Buck is. Just I'll wait. We'll press pause. I'll be here when you get back. Press pause right now. Okay, you're back. Can you believe it? I mean, can you believe the transformation the Buck has gone through? But here's the thing. I mean, the physical transformation is phenomenal, but mostly it's the heart and the soul level that are so fascinating to me. And by the way, while you're at soulanarchist.com, you may notice there's a video version of the show as well that you can also watch. So without any further ado, I give you Buck Angel.
Anyway, thanks for taking some time to chat today, Buck.
Right on. No, thank you for asking.
Yeah, it's been it's a fascinating time, and you are one of the most interesting people I follow in social media, and I've been so excited to get to know you and talk to you more.
Right on, dude. It's such a shit show. I appreciate that, because I mean, whatever. It's just a shit show, dude.
It totally is. One of the things that I have admired and noticed about you so much is your willingness to take a stance that doesn't fit into any of the prescribed boxes that our current social dialogue is crafting for us.
Yeah. Thank you for noticing that. It means a lot. Actually, that's very powerful that you see that. It is. It means a lot to me, because I want people to see that. You know, we're being so pushed into either side, and there is no middle ground for people. I think people feel scared to take that middle ground. And so on some level, I do take a middle ground on many points, but I pretty much hold my own space. When I have a thought or an opinion, I pretty much, as you know, say it, and without any fear. Yeah. Totally.
I love that. Without any fear. And that's, the next point I want to jump into, and to bring our audience up to speed for those who may not already follow you. The thing I'm referring to is you commonly say, you're adamant about saying, I am a biological female.
That's right. Yes, I am. Maybe the listeners who don't know, I'm a transsexual man. So I'm a biological woman. Yeah. and when you see me, you'll be like, yeah, whatever, dude.
And listener, if you have not done so yet, if you haven't seen a picture of Buck yet, just press pause and go to the show notes. Go over to soulanarchist.com, check out the photographs of Buck. You need to see who I'm speaking with. And yeah. So that being said, you're just so fearless about that, and you take so much heat for it. And so I've been just dying to get the backstory. So
thank you. I get why. And so Willie, before we move on, but why the hell would I ever get heat for being honest about my own space? I mean, people can say whatever they want about their own journey. I don't care. It doesn't even need to be trans, whatever you want to say. But the fact that people would come after me on my own actual real reality story, it actually says a lot about what's happening today.
Right. It's so weird that this community who is also adamant about being able to define themselves on their own terms refuses to let you do it. How dare you? How dare you say what you are? How dare you speak your experience in clarity?
Yep.
How dare you not fit into our boxes?
And again, that's why people are starting to call it a cult. Then even I do on some level. I'm like, wait a minute, this is not where I come from. And I did not transition. I transitioned to live as a man. That's totally where I'm at. And, I do that all day. And I've been doing it before this crazy situation started happening. Right. So I have a lot of experience living as a transsexual man, more than most of the people that are talking on the internet. So it's very strange. Yeah.
Yeah. You've been doing it longer than most of them have been born.
That's right.
That being said, can we get into your origin story?
Sure.
You're born in California, and I was reading up that you as a teenager you felt tomboyish.
That's
for
right.
Yeah. Term. And and in your bio you invoke the term gender dysphoria a few times, and
that's right.
That's an interesting one because that's a psychological diagnosis that is found in the DSM-5, which is what all mental health professionals use, and so the implication there is that it's seen as a mental disorder.
That's right.
So my first thought is how do you feel about that?
I'm the guy who says it is a mental disorder. I'm the guy who actually fights against many people in the community who are trying to get that taken off. Now, that being said, we have this idea that mental disorder means you're, just out of control and you can't focus no, that's not what mental disorder. There's a huge variety of mental disorders. And I will say for me, yes, I have a mental disorder on some level. And I don't care what anybody else says out there, however they want to do it. For me, it's always been about a mental disorder. I was born biological female. I didn't feel that way. There's my brain interacting with my physical being. So that's mental. And then having to struggle with my outside not fitting my inside. It's the way I've always told my story. My outside does not fit my inside. And everyone got it. Everyone understood it. And everyone was of course, I've always had pushback from the world. That's just normal. Right. But that being said, majority of people who got to know me and understood my story and saw what I needed to do to fix the problem, the mental disorder, understood it. And for me, it's important that we keep it in that space. And the reason why I feel like we need to keep that space, because it starts to be this idea that anyone can be trans or anyone. And why would anyone want to be trans? I don't want to be trans. It's horrifying experience that I had to get to this space. So I'm going off topic a little bit, but yeah, I do believe it's a mental disorder on some level, 100%.
Wow. And what's fascinating about it is you speak about it with no shame.
Nope, not at all. Because that's the other thing. I don't want it to be shamed. And no way, shape, or form should mental disorders or mental space or mental illness or all of that should ever be shamed. And so what I'm trying to say is we need to actually embrace mental disorder and mental illness and all of these things. I mean, I would say every person on the face of the planet probably has some mental space that they should be going to a therapist or a psychologist, or, we need to work on our brains. We don't just need to pretend like it's all okay, because it's not.
Because it's not. And what I love about it is you're like, and it's okay that it's not okay.
That's right. So, anybody who has, let's just talk maybe somebody who has a physical disorder, right? So who's maybe a little person and has to walk through the world that way. They pretty much figure it out, and they pretty much find a way and the solution to it. And I don't think, I have a person who's a friend of mine who's a little person, and she figured it out. She walks the world that way. It's everyone else who has a problem with it.
Right.
So it's everyone else who has a problem with me being a transsexual man. I have no problem with it. It's been the cards I've been dealt, and why I try to destigmatize in a way that doesn't push people away. It brings you, Paul, to me because you're interested in me now. You're not disgusted by me. You say, I want to figure this dude out, because I'm open to discussing it, and I don't push you away and say, which is what is happening today, I feel like.
What do you think is why is it that you operate with no shame, and yet so many people in our society are plagued by it?
Yeah.
How did you get so fortunate?
Yeah, I get that question all the time. I'm like, how do I get it? I get the question of how do you walk the world the way you are? Well, because I haven't had bottom surgery. I still have a vagina.
And I'm not even referring to that specifically. I'm just saying your ability to let seemingly contradictory ideas coexist. And not many people out there have that ability, and it's a really beautiful thing. Yeah. And I have a feeling you probably do this in other parts of your life too, aside from your gender identity. But anyway, what's the origin of you? And I mean, did you have amazing parents?
Yeah.
Did you just show up this way?
Everything.
Did you get taught this?
Actually, really what it is I'm 59, right? And I transitioned 27 years ago. So if you were talking to me 27 years ago, you would not be talking to the same person, which I pretty much think most people are that way, or I hope they are. You're growing. I've grown a lot in my transition, number one. So number one, transitioning. It gave me the power to be. Prior to that, I did not have the power to be, because I was so disoriented and walking the world as a woman, and I hated it. And so I was very angry. I was very disconnected. I was drunk all the time and high. And through my transition, I don't get drunk anymore. I don't get high. I focus. So I think number one thing people need to hear is becoming yourself, whatever that means. You want to be a ballerina? Go figure it out and become a ballerina, because you'll regret it for the rest of your life. But what I did is I figured out how I needed to walk the world. And once that happened, everything opened up for me, and I started to learn how to navigate the world. And as I started to learn to navigate the world as a man, what I started to do was try to teach myself to be a better person. Now, not everyone is going to do that. But for me, I was tired of being angry and disconnected and not focused. And then I thought, it's a gift. I've been given a gift to become Buck, and I've been given a gift to have the world see me as a man. And on some level, it was, I think, partly gratitude for where I'm at. And when you get gratitude, you start to realize that things are given to you for a reason, and that you must be thankful for them, or else they'll never be given to you again. Wow. So I do think gratitude is attached to where I'm at today.
How did you learn gratitude?
Through years of work and really wanting to enjoy my life, and not wanting to hate life anymore, not wanting to not participate, right? I didn't participate in life for many years because I just didn't feel comfortable. So now participating in life, it gave me gratitude every day I wake up. So that's the key also. Waking up and knowing you woke up, because sometimes you won't wake up and you won't even know that you didn't wake up. You're dead. But you realize waking up in the morning is a gift. Waking up with 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, you get to walk the world. Many people don't get those opportunities. So I think gratitude comes from knowing what you have and how precious it is. And that to me is gratitude.
I love that. I suspect that many people who are listening to this have either gone through or are going to have to go through that transition of feeling awful in their own skin, feeling anxiety about their life, and then hopefully they can get to where you're at. So, I mean, did you have You mentioned your transition was the impetus for that, but did you have any mentors? Did you read any books? Like, were you sitting under a tree meditating? Like, how did this epiphany of gratitude come to you? You know?
Buddha book. Yeah. So honestly, yeah, that's great. But that's a great question, because really how it did come to me was through sobriety. Okay. So stopping drinking, stopping doing drugs, and really getting clarity in my brain. Number one. Then number two,
I'm sorry, did you go through 12-step? Okay.
Yes, I did. I totally did. It saved my life.
Gotcha.
So I haven't been in AA for many years. I removed myself from it only because I'm a very independent thinker. And so on some level, I'm the guy who gets the help I need. And then I realize that I need to fly on my own. Like, I'm kind of a solo flyer, if that makes sense.
You're able to take the training wheels off at the right time.
That's right. That's right, my friend. And I'm big on that. And I'm big because AA is badass and I wouldn't be here without it. But I felt like it was holding me back at a certain point. And then that's when I had to say, wait a minute here. I'm not that person I was 3 years ago. Right. So after 3 years of every day doing the steps, every day going to meetings, putting myself out there, it was just one day I realized, wait a minute here. I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. And I do not want to drink anymore. And I do not want to use drugs. And it all and this is not part of AA. They would not like what I was about to say, but what I say to myself is I'm cured on some level because I believe that it actually came from my gender dysphoria, and I wasn't comfortable walking the world as a woman, so I would just drink so that I wouldn't have to see the world. But now, as you see, I'm a man and I could just walk. I don't ever feel like getting drunk anymore, ever. Wow. It's not even a thought process of mine. It's just, I'm so happy to be a man. Yeah.
One thing about 12-step, I've been around enough people who've gone through it to know that there's a component of it where you are encouraged to always identify as an addict. You're always an addict in recovery, you know, and that identity.
That's right.
And so do you identify as an addict in recovery?
No. I do not anymore. So, and let me tell you why. So again, AA saved my life. I want people to understand that. I believe in the program. The program is badass, but I do believe that there's a time when you need to fly away from there. And so, so for me, I don't feel like an addict anymore. I do not have that. I have a addict personality. I drink coffee like mad, right? Yeah. But I'm also in the cannabis business. So as sobriety happened to me, within my about 30 years into sobriety, I said, wait a minute here. Like, I'm taking sleeping pills because, you know, I just do so much and I fly all over the world and I'm just like, eh. So the sleeping pills were actually making me feel horrible. So my friend said, dude, try cannabis. And I'm like, I'm sober. He's like, dude, you're using sleeping pills. Right. And then I started using cannabis with this. I was like, oh God, I'm going to start drinking. I'm going to start using cocaine again. Nope. Never even thought about it. And I use it regimentedly as a medication. And so that's when I realized, wait, I'm not that addict that everybody kept telling me I was. I had to look deep inside and why was I drinking and why was I using drugs? Because that's what they tell you in AA. There's a catalyst to why. That's why they have you do steps. So you figure out what is you're doing to act that way. And I realized everything was a basis of my gender. And once my gender got taken care of, it was actually lifted from me. Wow. So, you know, I have a disagreement with that. And I think people on some level, for a lack of a better word, can be cured and find the space to understand why they used alcohol.
Yeah.
That's the way I do my sobriety now.
I love that. All right. So we were talking about your evolution through AA and how that taught you about gratitude. And
that's right.
What was the timing between your sobriety experience and your gender transition?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I got sober, and within like 2 years, in the first 2 years of my sobriety is when I actually finally found some. So, you know, I transitioned 27 years ago, and there was nobody transitioning. There was no internet. There was nothing. So for me, it was about 2 years into my sobriety, I started to get that clarity and start to realize, like, I need to take care of this or something's going to happen. Like, I just felt constantly suicidal, to be honest with you. So
okay.
That.
So the sobriety happened, then the gender transition. That's right. That's right. It was through sobriety that I realized I could transition, which was also a whole other space because there was no internet. You couldn't Google it. You couldn't find it. Right. There were no women becoming men. There was always men becoming women, but there was never women becoming men. Right. Yeah, you're a real pioneer in that regard, from what I understand. So what's the difference between like a tomboy girl and somebody who has gender dysphoria? You know, like somebody who just a girl likes to play with trucks more than dolls, but it's still like a girl, and somebody with dysphoria. How do you parse that out?
So you're right. What an excellent question. And I don't fucking know. Nobody knows, dude. So don't let them fool you on that one, especially when it comes to kids. Kids are constantly changing. The idea that you think a girl who plays with a truck or a boy who has a Barbie doll is transgender is so insulting, number one. Number two, it's actually dangerous.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I have friends from back in the day who are not like me, and we were total little, tomboys and dykes and like crazy little, masculine girls. And this girl went that way and I went this way. So you can't say that. It is such a personalized experience. It is not something that you can just say this person is that and that person is that because of the way they act. It takes a lot. That's why I'm really, really big on mental health care. And like, you got to get a kid into a mental health care professional. You can't just take a kid at face value. When a kid says, I feel like a boy, and we're going to put you on hormones. We're going to put you. That's just insane to me. I'm telling you, I speak out against it all the time. I find it insane. Yeah. Yeah. And
it's become quite politically unpopular to speak against that. The trend seems to be believe the children, So
believe the children. First off, I have an 8-year-old. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to believe the kid. Just so you know. So that being said, though, if my kid said to me, I have a little boy, if he said to me, you know what, Dad, I want to wear a dress today and wear some pink nail polish, go right ahead, kiddo. You go right ahead.
Yeah.
That's called social transitioning. I have no problem, honestly, with a kid wanting to dress however they want to dress, be however they want to be, because that's what kids do. You and I both know that. They play with stuff. They move around. They have the opportunity. But to pigeonhole a kid into a space because they say, Mommy, I feel like a boy, or Mommy, I feel like a girl, it's just, I don't even know what to say about that, because I don't think that's fair to the child. And I do not think it's fair in the scope of understanding transsexual people, right? I think it's much more complicated than that.
So what does it look like as a parent when your child starts playing and exploring these ideas, which is really like a normal part of being a human? You have to just wonder, like, what's it like to be that? What's it like to be that? I mean, how, let me ask this a different way. Like, what advice do you have for parents out there who have kids that are starting to explore and think about things?
Right. Yeah. Well, here's the advice I have. Listen to your kid. Love your kid. Be cool with your kid. If your kid wants to wear boys' clothes, let them do it. If they want to have their name be Bobby instead of Barbara, let them do it. What I'm going to tell you is do not start hormone blockers or hormone therapy until you get your child into some form of therapy. And I'm going to discourage gender therapy. I'm going to say, because you're going to go to a gender therapist, that therapist already has an agenda, and that therapist is going to push. So I'm not about gender therapists. I'm about a therapist who has a much more wide range of understanding what all of this means. There's a variance there. There's a nuance there. There's so many. It's not black and white. So to parents out there, the number one thing I think you have to do is just listen to your kid, watch your kid. Don't be like, oh, no, you're not, you're a girl. You know what I mean? It's just really a space to let your child explore, because that's called social transitioning. And I think exploring is the most healthiest way to do it.
So at what point do you then start taking it more seriously and saying, okay, our child is in a specific situation and it's time to take some action?
That's right.
Where's that line in the sand?
Well, yeah, you're going to find that. If I'm going to tell you that, then you should have your hair should be standing on your head. Nobody can say that. Nobody except maybe a professional doctor who's been seeing your child for X amount of time. If they're just diagnosing them after a month, I would be wary of that. So it's a time thing, right? It's a thing that's going to take some time, and then you will know your child will start to do things that could be detrimental to their health. So for my example, I started cutting. So I started using razor blades and cutting at 16 and really cutting my face and cutting my breasts and telling my parents, oh, I'm a man. And that's when all the shit really hit the fan. But again, this was in the 70s. We didn't even talk about that kind of stuff. I actually went into a psychiatric hospital because of it. They thought I was mentally ill on some level. I was, but they didn't know what the sort of underlying problem was. So, that's the thing is I don't want your kid to start cutting themselves. I don't want your kid to become an alcoholic, and I don't want your kid to be, suicidal. But let's be honest here. Like, those are also things that happen with all kids, not just trans kids. Kids do deal with life. And so when we're just saying trans kids have the highest rate of suicide, I'm gonna challenge that. Let's talk about gay kids. They have a high rate of suicide too. Let's talk about kids of color. They have a high, there's a lot of variances there. When you're just putting this information out there, that's why I believe in critical thinking. Question everything.
Yeah, I love that. When you mentioned that, earlier in our conversation that you were a different kind of person 28 years ago.
That's right.
How would you describe yourself back then?
Oh, very shy, very disconnected, angry at the world, constantly getting into fistfights. At one point I became this is so weird. I was a fashion model and I was discovered, right? I was very androgynous as a female. And so they took me to the UK, to London, and I was, pretty much they were positioning me to become like a major supermodel, but I just couldn't do it. I didn't like it. And I would drink like mad, and I would show up to, all the castings, and I would fight, and I would show up with black eyes, and like, who are you?
You would have been a nightmare.
I was totally that girl. I was that out of control, like just, angry. I had a bald head. I was just like totally insane.
Wow.
And so it just was night and day. Literally, I became so much calmer. So how they always say, oh, testosterone makes you angry. Actually, testosterone was the thing that calmed me down and made me focus and didn't make me angry. So, I'm going to dispel that myth as well.
Interesting.
It's not true. Yeah.
I want to wander into the deep end for a second. Let's talk spirituality.
Yeah.
What's your do you believe in a soul? Do you believe in a God or eternity, anything like that?
So I'm all about the universe. So I'm not so my partner is Jewish, and so we're raising our son in that space. Mm-hmm. And so I have started to sort of grab a hold of Judaism, more of the spiritual space. I was raised Baptist, which is a whole other
good
story.
Times.
Whoa, let me tell you. So that being said, I'm a sinner, 100%.
You need Jesus.
100%.
You need Jesus.
I need
Buck.
Jesus. So for me, it's about, I'm a very spiritual person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, I meditate. I believe in energies. I believe what you put out in the world is what you get back. I'm that kind of guy. I don't necessarily believe in a religious God or that kind of thing. I more believe that I guess more sort of on maybe Buddhist side, or, that's really where I live my life. I'm really about energies and connecting. And I think that's saved me in this whole new world of trans craziness, that it's given me a different perspective on life, and it makes me look at things without anger in my heart. It makes me look at, well, why do you think that way and I think this way? I'm willing to have that conversation. I think that actually comes from the fact that I believe in energy. So if me and you are always pushing against each other, we're never going to resolve anything.
Right.
But if me and you are willing to come here and meet in the middle and have the conversation, that comes from that space of understanding what you put out in the world comes back to you.
So what I'm driving for here is I'm curious about your mystical take on gender identity. Is it, do souls have gender? Is it a biological thing, or are you like a woman or a man trapped in a woman's body, as it were? Like, what's your take on all that, if we're to get all woo woo about it for a minute?
Yeah. So I'm 100% believe in biology. 100, and you can never change my mind on that. It's actually, I did my critical thinking on that. It is actually real. It's factual. It's real. 99% of the world lives in the biology space. I'm giving them the 1%. And so that being said, sex is real. It's gender that we can have the discussion about. And now gender is a whole other space. Gender on some level is socially constructed, right? Because again, like, male and female, that's the sex, but then the gender part of it, where we talk about my masculinity and living as a man, and those things, if you can see, they have been sort of constructed, if you look at it, stand back and look at it, in a way that men are supposed to be this way and not cry and, very stoic, and women are allowed to be this way. Well, those sort of traits to gender have been constructed, but there's other traits to gender that I don't think have been constructed.
Such as?
And I think that we have, such as, I'm going to say that there's an innate space, I think, that happens with masculinity and possibly even just being male, that wants to sort of, and again, it's a blanket statement, and of course people can go in and out of this, but I think this innate thing to sort of want to dominate. And I do think that comes from a masculine space. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if that's socially constructed, or because as soon as I started taking testosterone, I did start to see things change within inside of me that had never been there before. Wow. Right? The lack of crying in the beginning, really, and I know that was the testosterone. It totally shut down my emotional space. Now I'm a big crybaby and I cry all the time, but I think it's because my body got used to it. So, people need to understand I have actual real experience in the world, living as a female, biological female, and now living as a man within the space of taking testosterone. I'm not biological, but I have put testosterone in my body at a rate that now makes me look like a man. And on some level, does it make me think like a man, right? We could have so many conversations around this because I don't know, but I only know my own experience as, what the testosterone has done to the way I feel in my own body and the way I can confront situations, which it's pretty fascinating to me.
I heard a really interesting interview the other day on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I forget the guest, but it was a woman who wrote a book called T. It was a book about testosterone. And she was talking about people who've taken testosterone supplements, and specifically trans people, and said that biological women who started taking testosterone supplements, they were talked about the way their sexual outlook changed, and they started viewing other sexual partners more as sexual objects.
Yep.
And she was saying, like, this whole thing, like, women tend to really crucify men for looking at them as sexual objects, but she goes, but these women experienced it too once they got some testosterone in them.
That's right.
Did you have that?
Oh, totally. That's the cross-sex hormones, right? They call it cross-sex hormones because I produce estrogen, but they're putting a foreign substance into my body. 100%. I already had a pretty high sex drive prior to transitioning, but it just boosted that. Now, that being said, that's not everyone, of course not. But I do think the testosterone hormone is linked to sexual drive. They link it to aggression, but I'm going to disagree. It depends on how much you're taking and how you're taking it. Right. And, there's a lot of variables there. So I do believe that it is a sex hormone, for sure, sexual hormone, and it does heighten the libido for sure.
Right. So getting back to this idea of gender expression being more socially constructed versus, but then you're also dipping into but there are kind of some aspects of it that maybe are constants though, and you're talking about masculine energy being a proactive type of energy. Keep going on that for a minute.
So it's so complicated because all I know is from how I feel, right? And so the things that changed for me within the testosterone, which is a sex hormone, right? So a man who's born a man is already going to have these things, but a person who's coming into becoming a man half in my life, what I started to notice was that my confidence level. So is that innate to men? Do men have more confidence than women, right? Or is that, again, a socially constructed space? But I don't think it is a socially constructed space. I think that the hormones create that sort of, so let's use a trans woman as an example. So a trans woman is coming from a male space, right? She was born male, right, and she is pretty much socially conditioned male. So I was socially conditioned female.
Right.
And so when she's coming to her now transition, going from a man and to living as a woman and putting estrogen in her body, so we're also discounting that now for this amount of many years, she was raised as a man. So she was taught to be aggressive. She was taught to put her space in there. So do you see, so now when we see in the world, we see how trans men act in the world and how trans women act in the world. And again, blanket statement, but if you see, the more aggressive trans people out there are who? The trans women. And people always have this, well, where are the trans men? Well, we get spoke over a lot. Our space gets taken over because the trans women seem to be the more dominant voice in this conversation. Right. So is it because they were raised as men and this is what they've been taught to be, even though now they're women, right?
So there's two layers. You're saying there's like definitely two layers of phenomena. One is the lessons that your parents taught you and society taught you about how you're supposed to act. But then there's the way the chemicals are influencing you.
That's right. That's right.
And both are true.
Both are true. I mean, from my own experience, and again, at my own space in this, and watching and being 27 years transition and being around trans women and trans men, and watching how, hormones, how estrogen reacts to a person who is biologically male, and then how a testosterone reacts to a person who is born biologically female. Yeah. And these are the things we should be looking at, and why we need to have these conversations more and more, because trans women are not women. Trans women are women, are trans women, and trans men are trans men. They're not men.
Yeah. Okay.
It's ridiculous.
Can we get ourselves into all kinds of trouble now?
Yeah, but that's okay, because if someone's gonna get mad at me for saying that, then they're not listening. They're not listening, for sure. And they're not willing to have a conversation. Yeah. Because I'm willing to have that conversation, and when you don't put me in that space, I'm not a man. Yeah, I live as a man, and I want to be a man, and I wish I was born a man. But I live in reality, friend. My reality is I wasn't born male, and I will never be biologically male. I'm not like you, nor do I. Now I'm comfortable being who I am, and I don't need to be like you.
I love that.
I'm very comfortable being who I am as a man, and that's where we're discounting our transition, and we're saying, oh no, we're women and we're men. Well, why are we discounting our space, and why are we trying to emulate you instead of just being us? That's the scary part.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
I mean, if that, I think that may be the gem of this whole conversation here. and I wish we could somehow like extract that wisdom and put it in bottles and sell it. This being able to be comfortable in who you are, and you don't need to be another thing,
So that's the message I get when people start sputtering out trans women are women and trans men are men. I get the message of, we're too ashamed of who we are. We're too ashamed to discuss this situation. We're too ashamed to say that we are different people, because we are. I'll never be like you, and that our experiences are different. Instead of celebrating and saying our experiences are different and we can bring something to the table. I can bring something to the table now as a transsexual man that you can't bring to the table.
Absolutely.
And me and you together, right? So me and you together, you as a biological man and me as a trans man, can actually change the world together. Because we can talk about the things that we dislike in masculinity, and we can talk about the things that we like. And then we can sort of, because men are getting a bad rap. Let's talk about that. Men are being toxic. Men are this, men are that. I'm so disgusted in hearing that. It pisses me off. You can't tell. Men are not that way. Men are taught to be a certain way. Right. All we need to do is start changing the structure of what men are taught. You think I teach my son bad behavior? No, I do not. I teach him good behavior. And so when he gets older, he'll be responsible as a man. And the responsibility he has as a man is not to be an asshole.
I love that. So, okay, you just laid out this view that trans people are like a third category, for lack of a better term.
That's right.
What's your take on, let's talk about some current events right now. What's your take on the athletics situation, where we have some trans, like trans women wanting to compete with other biological women? What's your take?
That's right. Okay, well, this one gets me into hot water all the time, because again, I pretty much disagree with a lot of what's going on in the community. And I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of people in the community who disagree too. They're just too scared. I have them all behind my back pushing me. They're like, dude, keep saying it. But people are, people will lose their jobs. They'll lose their jobs. They'll get doxxed in their house. And it's like, they can't do that to me. They just can't. And you can't cancel me.
Right.
Because you just can't. I won't let you, number one. And number two, I'm speaking my own space, and I'm speaking where people like you want to hear me. And when people like you want to hear me, you can't cancel me because I'm saying something that actually makes sense.
Yep.
And so that being said, come on, man, why can't we just have a real conversation about this? It's disgusting and wrong. I was a professional athlete as a woman. And I'm going to tell you, I ran during the USSR times, right? Where we had the big old steroided out USSR. And I used to be like, what? There's no way. They would blow us away. They would totally blow us. They were all on steroids and they basically were trans men. They had mustaches and boobs. And I'm like, what? This is not okay. I'm fucking pissed. And so I can actually have an actual experience on some level with this. And so all I'm saying is I don't understand why trans women are okay with this. And because it's actually making them look bad. Yes, I want trans people in the Olympics. Yes, I want trans people to use the restroom. Yes, I want trans people to coexist in the world because I coexist in the world with no problem, right? I'm not going to go walking around the locker room with my towel off when there's a 10-year-old kid standing right there. I'm just not going to do it because I actually know the detrimental space that can not only put that kid in, but me. And so, you know, it just frustrates me because here's the situation. It's not fair. It's not fair. When we start putting trans women who have transitioned at the age of 30, who already had their hormonal space, already went through puberty, we know it. It's a logical thing. They already grew up as male. Right. And so what if they're transitioning at 30? They're physical. We're not talking about mental. We're talking about physical, people. We're not talking about hurting your feelings. We're talking about sports, which is about fairness. It's why they have weight classes, why they have men and women classes, why they have, you know, all those classes are for a reason, to keep in a fair space. So when a 30-year-old woman who transitioned from a man to a woman at 30 and was a weightlifter and the male category and was like number 385, but then transitions to be a woman and now she's the number one woman athlete of the world. Come on, man. I mean, yeah. So that's how I feel about it. I feel like it's unfair. And I feel that we need to have a fucking discussion about it. And it's not transphobic. It's what about women?
Yeah.
Isn't it misogynist then if we're not going to talk about it? We
For
can
sure.
flip the narrative there.
So would you...
That's right.
If you were... if we were to put you in as king and you get to fix this problem, what would you do? Would you have like a third category in athletics? Or what do we do?
That's right. That's right. We make a third category. We make a trans category.
Okay.
I don't care if you like it or not. It's the way we're going to do it right now until we can actually figure out how to make it fair. Now, if we make a trans category and the biological woman over here wants to run in the trans category, awesome. Then we say, yeah, because that's fair. To me, that's fair. She's saying, I want to run against. We are not being logical in this discussion. And we're acting as if trans women don't have a biological advantage when they fucking do.
Right.
And I'm so sick and tired of people pushing it as transphobia, as turfy, and that's wrong. It is not. And I don't want to force myself into your space because if I start to force myself into your space, what are you going to do? You're going to hate me. You're going to be resentful of me. You're never going to be okay with the ultimate goal is for trans people to exist in the world. And now what we're doing is we're pushing against you so hard that you're like, ew, I hate trans people. They're fucking gross. But guess what? We're not all like that. That's what I want your listeners to hear. We don't all agree with that stuff. Right. And we want to have the conversation and we want to make it fair and we want to coexist. And so I think creating a trans category is the number one most important thing we should do. And then that will start to alleviate some of the problems.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another current event, and I want to lay out a little groundwork because somebody may listen to this podcast two or 3 years from now, so it needs to make sense.
That's right.
Right now, there's a story in the news about a spa in California where there's a women's only section, and a patron walks in that's appears to be just a normal man, says I identify as a woman, is exposed in front of women and children. Or young girls, I should say, and causes a big uproar. And California law says that they have to allow that to happen.
That's right.
What do we do there?
Law. God damn these people. They make me so mad. I worked so hard to just really create a space where we can coexist in the world, and we were getting there. We really were. So here's what I'm going to say about that. It's wrong. It's wrong. A trans woman should be able to go into the woman's room without making a scene. Now, all the trans women I know would never walk around without a towel on and showing if they still have a penis. They're just not going to do that because it doesn't really relate to who they are.
Right.
So when I hear a story like this, I'm thinking, well, why is this trans woman doing this? Is she doing it as a political statement? Is she doing it to piss people off? Is she doing it because she wants to be seen this way? I start to question it. And remember, again, I always question everything. I want to know the motives of that trans woman because the trans woman I know would never do that.
Same here.
What I said earlier is, I go to that spa. I actually been going to that spa for 10, 15 years remember, I don't have a penis. So, and where do I go? Into the men's locker room. And what do? I go naked. No man has ever said a word to me. But when I see a kid in there, I always put a towel on and I never make it uncomfortable for people.
I see.
So, and I've actually have friends from there. I have people sit next to me like, hey dude, what's up? I'm like, I don't know. And the next thing you know, we're exchanging numbers and we're totally chill with each other. I've made so many friends at the Wee Spa. But that being said, remember, men and women are different. Men and women are different. And so when a trans woman who has not had surgery and still has her penis and walks into a woman's space, it is going to cause a situation. And I don't understand why trans women aren't having that conversation, or why it's transphobic for a woman, a biological woman, to come out of the locker room and not be comfortable with that. She has every right to be uncomfortable. It doesn't necessarily make her transphobic. It's she's saying, hey, wait a minute here. What's going on? I don't even know what this woman looks like. So does this woman look like me? Because if she looks like me, then yeah, I can understand why anyone would be like, there's a man in the woman's locker room, right?
And again,
is not...
if you haven't seen Buck's pictures, just go look. Buck's a good-looking guy with a big full beard, yeah.
But, there's some trans women that still haven't gone through the transitional spot of using hormones, maybe having surgeries.
Right.
And because in California, now we have something called self-ID. So that means you sitting across from me right now, my friend, could actually ID as a woman.
Right.
And that would give you every opportunity to walk in any woman's space you want to. Come on, man.
And all I have to do is say, I'm a woman.
It makes me so angry because it's not, first off, I worked my ass off to get where I'm at.
Right.
And I had to go through so much stuff. And so how can we just let anyone self-ID as a woman or a man? And that is it. We're not looking at it logically. It's dangerous. It's fucking dangerous when we start to do stuff like that. And then we're discounting women.
Yeah.
We're discounting how women feel. How do women feel in this space? And so, again, no one wants to have the conversation. Everything today is transphobic. Everything. Even I'm transphobic.
So,
ridiculous.
Okay, so I have so many questions. First of all, will you educate us a little bit on the legalities and the mechanics of self-ID? What is that construct exactly?
So basically, here's the deal. When I transitioned many thousands of years ago, we had something which was called therapy. And you had to go to a therapist and you had to talk to your therapist for a matter of possibly, I think it was 2 years, 1 to 2 years. And what they did is they made you walk in the shoes of the gender you wanted to live in,
right?
Which was what I called it earlier, social transitioning. So I had to dress like Buck. I had to be Buck. I had to walk the world as Buck for 2 years with no hormones, no surgery, no nothing, to sort of get a feel of it. And to see, that way, if I wasn't really feeling it, what would happen? I just take off the hat, I take off the t-shirt, and I move right back into being that girl again.
Yeah.
Great. They call that gatekeeping now. And so what they did is they eliminate gatekeeping. Can you believe it? I call it safekeeping. I'm like, wait a minute here. You're wrong. It's safekeeping.
Okay.
It's the reason why I never turned around and looked the other way. I always kept going forward because I had a therapist who was watching. Then from the therapist, I had to get a note from my therapist to go to my endocrinologist, and my endocrinologist, did that. It was all a stepping stone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was all 1, 2, 3, and that's the way it should be. I'm gonna argue with the people today, and I'm gonna say it needs to be in this. Now you can self-ID 100% and do all of that. I don't have any issues with that. The issues I have is when it comes to legalities.
Right.
And we start to override these situations, and anyone can just say it doesn't. So as we know, it's not such a big deal for a woman to become a man. It doesn't feel as threatening. on some
Right.
level.
Like if a woman were to
I
walk
think.
into the men's locker room and say, fellas, I'm a dude. Most of the guys would be
That's
like,
right.
that's awesome.
They're all like, right on. Yeah, now they are. They're all like, right on. You come right in.
Yeah, no one's going to care.
Nope.
But yeah, men and that just again highlights the fundamental differences between men and women, or the masculine and the feminine, perhaps.
That's right.
I don't.
That's right. That's right. And I don't understand why it's such a hard conversation to have, because they're acting as if nobody. They're acting as if nobody should question it. That's what they're acting like. And sorry, people, but they're going to question it. They're going to question me. People question me still all the time. People still say she to me. People still freak out on me. But so what? I've learned to navigate the world that way. And if these trans women think that people are not going to question them, then they're living in some alternate reality. Because the reality of it is people will question us forever. We're not biological men and women. And so that's why it's important that we don't lose that part of our story. And we say, so why can't we have an entrance for trans women? Why do trans women want to be in that space? Why do trans women feel as if they're not welcomed into the women's restroom or women's locker room, then that makes them not female? What? That's the part that I don't understand. If we start to sort of let ourselves enter these space, or why don't we just have gender-free locker rooms and then anyone can use it? And that we still have men. So this has always been my idea. We have a men locker room, we have a women locker room, we have the gender-free locker room. So anyone can use that. So the women who don't feel comfortable go here, the men who don't feel comfortable go here, and anyone else can go here. It's a solution to everything. Yet for some reason, they have to infiltrate the woman's space. If they had a gender-free space and I couldn't use the men's rooms, I would be totally fine with it. I just want to put my fucking shorts on and get to the gym. I don't have time for all this nonsense.
Yeah.
You see, so they're politicizing it on such a level that I think is actually detrimental to the future of trans rights.
Why is it that? Why is there so much vitriol there? Why is there so much force behind trying to like get in like that?
Money.
What's the money trail there?
So the money trail there is, if you've noticed, we have self-ID, which we were just talking about.
Okay.
So if you don't need a doctor and you don't need that, and anyone can self-ID, that means you could say, I want to start taking hormones. And if you want to start taking hormones, where are the hormones coming from?
Pharmaceutical companies.
The hormones are coming from the pharmaceutical companies. Oh, wait a minute. I want to get top surgery. Oh, wait. There's surgeons who are actually completely changing their practice, and now they're trans surgeons. I'm like, really? Where are your qualifications? How'd you learn to do that? Where'd you get the surgery? I'm questioning every single one of these doctors who are trans doctors, because so many of them are now calling themselves trans doctors, doing top surgery, doing bottom surgery, giving hormones. So I started to do research, and I found there's a website called Money Watch, which is a stock market website, and it actually has a whole article in there. Invest in trans surgery. It's the future, a $5 billion future in the next 5 years. I literally was like, spit my coffee. Not kidding. When we're done, I'll send you the link.
Okay.
Not kidding. So I'm starting to say, hey, wait a minute here. I start to step back a little bit, and I'm like, oh, wow, $5 billion in the next 5 years or whatever it says. I'm like, that's pretty money oriented. That means they don't give a shit about us. They see us as the future of money. That's really, I'm starting to feel that way, because I feel like there's no oversight. How can we not have oversight with something that's so drastic? Do you know that we're using hormones and those puberty blockers? They're not even made for that. We're actually it's called off label. Since when is that legal in the medical world, to use some substance that's off label? So the hormone blockers, the puberty blockers that we are using for children, are from precocious puberty, which is a real thing. Some kids have precocious puberty where they, it's all whacked out.
Right.
So they give them that to figure it out. It's made specifically for that, but yet they're giving it to like a kid who like raises a hand and says, "Mommy, I'm a boy," at 8 years old. And then next thing you know, they're just shoving hormones that were never tested, and I get into a lot of fights with my community because they're like, there's research, there's this. Show me the research. No, there isn't. There isn't. It's not possible to have research because we've only just started doing this in the last 5 years, or maybe even less. I don't know, but there isn't. There's no long-term thought process of what's going to happen to a child on hormone block. We all know puberty is important. Puberty is part of the growth process of a human being. It doesn't matter what gender you are. Yeah, that's right.
Why is everything, as you said, why is everything transphobic?
Let's just laugh at that one because it's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy to call somebody a transphobe and shut down the conversation. That's why it's easy to call somebody a TERF and shut down the conversation.
So it's laziness.
It's so easy. It's laziness. It's not wanting to have a conversation. It's because you know you're fucking wrong. So then instead of having the conversation with me, you're going to just shut me down. I'm not an idiot. So,
that works.
Yeah,
that works for me. Okay.
So I get called. Look, that's how ridiculous it is.
Yeah.
When they started calling me a transphobe and a TERF, that's when I knew it's done. You guys just screwed that word up. Nobody takes you seriously anymore.
Right.
It's become a stupid ass slur.
Yeah.
When before there's actually real transphobes out there who want to kill us, who hate us. 100% there are. But when you start flinging that word around like a fucking booger, right? You're just like flinging shit at people. No one cares anymore, and everyone's like, "Shut up."
yeah, like calling people fascists that you simply disagree with about tax policy, but that's really all that's going on.
That's right. That's 100% right.
Yeah.
And it's like, so, everything is so manipulated these days. The news is manipulated. Everything you read on the internet is manipulated. That's why I'm big on critical thinking. Yeah. And they don't want you to critical think. They don't want, if I think out the box of most of the trans community.
Right.
But let me tell you something. I'm starting to get many more trans people who are starting to say, thank you, Buck. Thank you, Bob. I'm starting to see that what I'm saying. Oh my God, it's changing everything for me because I've been alone. I've been alone in this fight for a while now. Me and Blair White. So pretty much we're the two most. She's the best. She's a badass. Yeah. I love her. I love her. So we're the two pretty much out there.
Yeah.
Oh, you should get her. I'll try to connect you.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Blair too.
She's excellent.
Absolutely. So. Why are our difference? It seems like our differences are there's an effort to erase them rather than to hold them up and let them be different.
That's right.
Why is that?
That's right. Embrace. We're not embracing our difference. It's such a good question because I've always embraced my difference from day one of being this dude and having my vagina and talking about it all over the world and doing my porn and just learning how to embrace the thing that will never change. That's something I did learn at AA. You accept the things you cannot change and you have the courage to change the things you can.
Sure.
And so that is hugely powerful when you put that in connection to whatever's going on in your life. Whatever that means, there are some things you will never be able to change, and there's some things you can goddamn change. And so I can't change my body. It's just the way it is. I haven't had the opportunity to do it. And so instead of crying about it and being so like, the world hates me, I figured out how to navigate the world. So it's dangerous when we start to take that equation out of what it means to be a trans person. And trans should, they're very hypocritical, the community on some level, because they have this hashtag that says trans is beautiful. But then at the same time, you're not really expressing that in other ways. You're like trying to shut that down. So there's a lot of hypocrisy, I think, that sort of goes along with that message. And that doesn't make sense to me. Because on one level, you're saying, celebrate it. But on the other level, you're trying to like hide it.
Like on a soul level, what's going on there? Why the hypocrisy? Why are they like, here's a group of people who's saying, we want to be embraced, we want to be accepted in society, yet they're failing to extend that same grace to everybody else. Like, why the disconnect? Like,
there's a lot of anger. Remember also, I think that when you start to transition, today, more than anything today, we have what's called social media, and social media plays a huge part in the destruction of this community. I am 100% sure of it. And I don't just mean trans, I mean LGBTQ.
Right.
It has become a complete disruptor. People don't get along with each other. There's just so much insanity within that community. It's literally been broken up, which is dangerous because now we don't have the same power we used to have, right? Because we're all over the place. This one hates that one. And on some level, here comes that conspiracy part of me. On some level, am I thinking, are they the people over there who actually hate us, figuring out how to destroy us by entering our space and making us all fight with each other? Think about it, because it's been, some of the narratives that have been introduced in the community are really homophobic and have been induced into our community. That's so weird. I'm like, who speaks like that? And where's that coming from? And I'll use the example of if you don't date a trans person, you're transphobic.
Right.
I can't even keep a straight face.
That one's so weird. Yeah. Like,
dude, it's so weird.
like
it says everything.
Like
it says everything.
Everybody's entitled to their own attractions. Like nobody's entitled to having their own attractions except for the trans people.
That's right. You said it, dude.
Yeah.
That's why I'm just like, hey, I'm not part of that, you guys.
Yeah.
I am not. Like, that is, I also, I started my work in pornography, and I work in the sex field, and I'm very sex positive. And so I've always noticed that in the trans community, there's been a huge disconnect with sex, and there's a huge disconnect with our bodies. And we very much desexualize ourselves. We call, people come after me, you're fetishizing trans men. What the fuck are you talking about? Fetishizing, first off, is not a bad thing. It's just not.
I like your style.
Secondly, but I mean, if you think about it, it's like, and also I like being fetishized. So don't put me in your space.
But,
like,
and let's be,
what are you talking about?
Who doesn't? Like,
that's right. Let's be honest.
Everyone wants to be fuckable.
That is right. So
our
that's
ancestors,
why that narrative doesn't make sense.
Yeah, like our ancestors that didn't care about being fuckable
That's right.
actually weren't our ancestors because they didn't do it.
That's right.
We are the natural result of needing to be fuckable.
That's right.
And
so when you start saying stuff like, when you don't want to date a trans woman, you're transphobic, go fuck yourself. First off, number one. Number two, don't you dare tell people how they have to be attracted to you or else they're trans. That is it's disgusting and gross and wrong. And so on some level, it's actually homophobia when you start to tell a gay man that he has to be attracted to a trans man, or a straight man has to be attracted to a trans woman. And if you're not, like, no, that's not the way the world works. And I've been working in the sex industry for 20 plus years, and I know exactly how people don't like me sometimes, or they're like grossed out by me, or so what? You just go the other way. And because I've been so open about who I am, I get shit ton of dates. I've never had a hard time getting a date, and people know exactly who I am. So I go to myself, when those trans women say that, I'm like, well, maybe you're ugly and you need to figure out something else. Put on some lipstick or something. Like, I don't know what the problem is here, but don't you dare make it a blanket statement that it's transphobic not to date a trans person. That is disgusting. That's like saying it's homophobic not to want to have sex with a man when you're a man, right? Like, no, it isn't. You're not attracted to men. Duh.
Right. I love that.
Yeah,
there are so many. I want to zoom out just a little bit here and glean a little more of your wisdom. There are people out there who are listening to this who have concerns, social concerns and political concerns and opinions, and are really worried about how things are playing out right now. And they want to say something. I was talking to a friend last night about this. Like, there's so much craziness going on, and she's saying, I want to make my voice heard. I want to say what I need to say about this. I think these topics deserve to be stood up to, but I'm worried about the consequences. I'm worried about what will happen in my professional life. I'm worried about losing friends. I'm worried about losing opportunities. And you're talking about all these the silent group of trans people who are coming behind you saying, thank you. I can't actually speak up myself, but thank you. Tim Pool, of a YouTuber and podcaster, he says the same thing. He says he has tons of celebrities that approach him and say, I'm a Trump supporter. Like, I voted for Trump, but nobody can know this because I will get canceled like a motherfucker out of this whole industry.
Right.
So
that's right.
So there's so much of this going on. What do you want us to know? the people who are like that silent majority who have something to say but are afraid of the consequences.
That's right. And I understand why they are. And it's a real thing. It's not a joke. It's actually a fucking real thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got to this space in our country that is supposed to be about democracy, and it's supposed to be about whoever you vote for. That's your choice. Right. I don't give a fuck if you like. I'm not a Trump person. My parents are, though. So that being said, it's in my family and I'm around it. It doesn't mean I have to hate my parents, and it doesn't mean I have to shut them down and never see them again. That's just fucking ridiculous. But this is what we're being taught.
Yeah.
We're being taught such hard hard boundaries, right? Like there's no nuance. That word nuance has been taken out of everything. So so I'm that guy that really does fit in the middle. I'm not really, really right, and I'm not really, really left. I'm much more sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
I do take some conservative values, and I do have, I'd say, probably more liberal values. But that being said, today I don't even like the liberal stuff. It's freaking me out. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? We don't go to the Wii Spa and start ripping the shit out of women and call that like democracy and call that like like that's insane. I don't want to be a part of that.
Right.
Antifa and all of that. I don't agree with any of that. That's not the way our country will move forward. So that being said, I get why people are fearful.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason that I am not fearful is because I have been doing this for such a long fucking time. I have built my brand.
Right.
I have built my space in the world. I have a huge amount of people who respect me and have always respected me because I've always been a straight up honest guy. So because of that, people see that. And so what I say to the silent majority, because it's very much that, is that you have to find the space to start to speak up. Now, it might just be one tweet or it might just be something you're having a conversation with, but I'm gonna tell you right now, if we do not all start speaking up, it's gonna be so detrimental to us in the future where we will never be able to speak up again. We won't.
Wow.
They'll get it to where it's gonna be so, I mean, look, I can't even say things on Instagram. They remove my posts. If I say something about sex, my post is removed. I'm like, what? We live in America, dude. I'm allowed to talk about sex between adults,
right?
Or anything that they don't like. You know, we get, and we are sort of a slave, for lack of a better word, to the social media space. You and I as businessmen, or we have to have these, and they know it. They have us by. But they're sort of really pushed on this woke side, right? On this side that we all have to have trans rights and we all have to speak a certain way and nobody can say this and nobody. I'm like, I don't live in that space. There's no way. I have a different opinion, and so I guess getting back to how do they do it? I think really how people have to start doing it is start doing it little by little and start doing it in your circle, and then start just really starting to get the balls or the nerve to start to speak your mind, because I personally don't like that you don't speak your mind. Whether or not I agree with you or not doesn't mean anything, but I don't like that you're not speaking your mind. I think that really is detrimental to the United States of America.
Right. How can people best speak their mind in a constructive way?
Blog. Why don't you just start a blog?
Yeah.
Everyone can start a blog. You can start your own space. Start a website with a blog on it. Start writing shit because it will get picked up. And, you know, I think that the more voices and the more opinions and the more disagreement and the healthier our community, or not even the community, the world will become, because we've shut down anybody. You know, everyone who agrees with themselves are over here, and everyone who agrees, everyone's living in a bubble.
Yeah.
Right. So you can watch how people are living in a bubble and how, you know, Twitter feeds you what you're looking at. Every social media site feeds you what you're looking at. So you're not even getting any outside opinions because the algorithms know what you're watching. And it's so insane.
Yep.
It's like that whole fucking, right, artificial intelligence. They're literally watching everything and feeding you and feeding that hate and feeding that idea that everyone hates you. And they know how to work the system. You have to realize that you're being spoon-fed. You're being spoon-fed information that might not be real information.
True. So somebody's listening to this right now who is saying, man, I feel really strongly about this topic and I want to share my beliefs about it. But my boss is way over on the other end, and my boss is kind of a fanatic. I'm afraid to say anything. Will you talk to them for a second?
And I'm going to tell you right now, you should be afraid, because those people have power over you. That's right. That's why I'm saying we got to start doing it in a way that's not going to make you feel like you might lose your job, because you will. I mean, I see it all the time. People lose their jobs because they're transphobic and they didn't let that. But, you know, you can always quote me. I'm the trans guy who's probably the guy who you're going to say, wait a minute, Buck Angel said this. People use me all the time. And that cuts that. Now you're not transphobic, because I'm an actual trans person who transitioned a long fucking time ago.
Yeah.
And I have different, I would say that I have a little bit more conservative ideas than the younger generation, right? I think that's the case, but it's hard. I wouldn't tell somebody to confront their boss, because I would hate for you to lose your job.
Maybe not even confront their boss, but maybe like make a tweet or a post on Instagram that their boss might see.
That's right.
You know?
And then somebody from the fucking company reports you to the boss.
Right.
And the boss says, why are you tweeting this shit? Because that's Nazi Germany, right?
Right.
I mean, no one's even talking about that. We live in fucking Nazi Germany. I saw a Facebook thing where they're like, report people. Like Facebook is sending that out to people, like, report people if you think they're an extremist. I'm like, what?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right, my friend.
And it's happening so fast.
It's scary. It scares the shit out of me.
It feels like we've got to like start talking a lot louder and a lot faster.
That's right.
Because it's the the momentum is picking up so much right now.
It's picking up. That's right. And I highly suggest everyone just fuck off. Go tell Facebook to fuck off and get off of there, because I'm there, but I don't interact on there much, because I do think that it's a dangerous place, and I think people get caught up in it and then they don't realize what's happening.
What about Twitter? Like Twitter's a dumpster fire too, and you're busy on Twitter. Like
I'm busy on Twitter, man.
What do we?
Twitter's my. Yeah, and Twitter's my space where I really throw up on everybody because I feel like it's the space you can go and do that. Like I don't do that so much on Instagram, and I just don't deal with Facebook. But really, I use Twitter in a way that's a more political space for me.
Yeah, and
it's a more of a space where I could really challenge these trans radical people, because I want people. I also don't want people, and I've amassed a large following on Twitter, not just one type of person. If you even looked at my follower list, you would be blown away. I have everything from the far right Republican to a far left woke Antifa person to like in the middle of the ground. It's interesting how I've amassed a large female population follow me. And I think that Twitter I feel like I'm allowed to speak my mind on there, whether or not you like it or not. Where other platforms, I'm not so much allowed to do that.
Here's one of the lessons I get from you. You speak up for what you believe in, and you stand up for what you feel are truths. I don't see you going on the offensive a lot. I see you more like holding up a light, saying like, I believe this, I believe that.
That's right.
And what's interesting about that is, as an outsider, I can look at that and go, okay, like I don't have a lot of things in common with this Buck Angel guy, but we totally vibe on this thing. And because he doesn't lash out all the time, like I feel like I'm probably welcome under his umbrella, even though we're pretty different.
That's right. Right on. Excellent. I love that you said that. That's really what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to coexist. It's like the thing I keep telling everybody. You cannot run over spaces. You have to coexist in a space. I can't just necessarily say I'm a dude and every dude's going to be okay with it, because they're not. You know, it took a long time for me to be welcomed in gay male bars, and they didn't like it in the beginning. And I respected that, and I left. And until I was little by little, just felt, you know, and that's what trans people need to understand. We can't just come in here and say, fuck you, roll over, and now we're taking over the world, because we're not. We're literally like 0.5% of the population. And I'm like, who do you people think you are? You know, I don't work that way. I do not. I just don't. Trans is this much of who I am, by the way. By the way, that's the other thing. It is not, I don't live as a trans person. I live as a dude. Trans just happens to be my sort of path to where I got. And I think that the problem is today that the younger generation identifies as trans. This is not my identity. I did not transition to be trans. I transitioned from my medical condition so that I could actually walk and live in the world without killing myself. And so I think that that's why there's different views of it, because today it's about identity. And where I come from, it's not about my identity. It's about me becoming a man and living in the world to coexist with other men and women and sort of walk the world that way. So I think because there's different opinions from the newer generation to I don't know, I think that there's a lot of younger kids now hearing me and understanding that, you know, you don't need to make trans your whole space. It should be a part of your space.
Just a slice of the pie.
That's right. Go and be a lawyer, dude. Go to school and be a lawyer and be a badass little lawyer. But what are you doing fucking wasting all your time being trans? It's such a waste of time.
I love that. You're like this you're so zen about it, you know. And
I mean, you know, I thank you for saying that. I want kids not to be caught up in this agenda, because it's an agenda. I don't want kids to think trans is this thing that people hate us, because they don't fucking hate us.
Yeah.
And they hate us when we're acting like jerks, but that's any group of people. Any group of people that acts like jerks, no one wants to be around them. So I just want this younger generation to say, hey, kids, I got a lot of time under my belt, 27 plus years of living this way. I think I know a thing or two. Don't take everything I say, you know, listen to what I say, use it. But the one thing I say to these kids is this: you are not trans. It's part of who you are. You're Bobby, fucking dude, man. Why are you wasting time with just this thought process and getting sucked into an agenda? We're all individuals, and we've lost your individuality when you're just part of this trans narrative. You are no longer an individual. You are now part of this organization that needs you to sort of push their agenda. And that's the scary part, when you start sort of incorporating children into this sort of space to do the dirty work.
It reminds, you know, as you flesh this out, the thought that's running through my mind is something I used to hear all the time growing up, like the anti-gang stuff, saying the thing about gangs is we have these broken families and people don't have a sense of belonging, and they just we're social animals, and so they go to the next best thing, which is a gang. And it kind of looks the same way. Like the whole identity politics thing, it looks like very much like gang behavior. Do you see it like that?
Yeah, it is. Oh, I see it as culty. So for me, I see it as a cult behavior.
Right.
And so I've been studying a lot of cult behavior, and I've been really reading up on it and understanding it. And holy shit. And I was like, there's a lot of parallels here with what's going on in our community, for lack of a better word. I'm like, they're indoctrinating these fucking kids because we have social media, and social media is powerful. I see my kid he's on social media, but I watch him on Roblox and all this shit. It's very powerful. They get sucked into it. Yeah. And then they start picking up the lingo, right? And then they start hearing and they start speaking a certain way. And that's exactly what's happening with a younger generation of kids. I mean, I was a punk rocker. It made me feel a part of. That was the group I went to, right? Yeah. So every kid wants to belong, and that's how humans are. We're tribal people. Yeah. But when you start to have certain work, I do see an indoctrination on some level.
Right.
Trans is beautiful. When you start making hashtags like that, I'm like, wait a minute here. You're misleading. It is not beautiful. It's a fucking gnarly space to be in. You got to take hormones for the rest of your life. You got to get surgery. You'll never be that person that you think you're going to be. You're misleading these kids. It's not beautiful. It's a space. If it's for you, we can figure it out and make it great. But, you know, it's not what these kids who's ever behind all of this narrative. It's not. We should be honest about it. It's a lifelong situation that will always be there, and you'll never get away from it.
I hear this. I'm going to invoke part of your past. You mentioned you grew up Baptist. And one of the things that Baptists say a lot, I think is really interesting, and I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, is I'm a sinner. This whole idea that, like, I'm imperfect and I need help. You know, I'm a broken man and I need Jesus. Right. You know, like, and it's like really easy to make fun of. But on some level, I hear that in you. I hear this acceptance with what you are and what you are not, and you're not battling with it anymore, and you're simply you're in partnership with it, and to invoke more of this like old Christian language, it's like you're born again, you know, and you had this kind of born again experience where you went from being this really angry person into this, you're very zen about it, and you let all these parts and pieces and ideas that might seem contradictory, you just let them live together. And so again, I know I've asked this before, but this is the most interesting thing about you to me is like how, and I pardon me for asking this like for the fifth time, but as we wrap up, you know, I just like really want to know how you became that born again person, you know?
Yeah, well, again, I'm going to use the word gratitude, right? age. I'm going to also say age.
Okay.
It really plays a lot. And, I look at the youngsters today and I think, oh shit, I was totally like that. Everyone's an asshole and like, fuck the elders. And these old people don't know what they're talking about. The music, and these kids listen to crazy music.
Get off my lawn.
Today. Off my lawn, totally. The cranky old, the kids call me Trampa because I'm just like this old tramp dude.
I know, I love it.
I'm like, sit down, kids, and listen.
Back when I was a kid.
No, it's so true. I even do that with, I'm like, back when I transitioned, there wasn't even the internet. I'm just like, you kids.
I had to walk to therapy through snow uphill both ways.
That's right, totally. My surgeon used hedge clippers to cut my tits off. So that's what you're talking about. Your kids got it made today. So, it really, I have to equate it to really age, number one, and also just realizing that I've got to be okay with myself because I don't want to be that. It's hard. It's hard to say without crying.
You can cry.
I'll say that. What it is that you get to a point where you're like, I have become this person. I'm not going to become the person that I thought I needed to be able to be okay with myself. And it's okay that I was born a woman, and it's okay that I figured out to fix it, whatever that means. And it's okay that I am not a biological man. And once I realized, because being a man is so many things, the tears come from gratitude. And the tears come from the fact that I have been gifted. And that's why I cry. And I really want people to see that they forget the gift of life. The gift of life. I came from the AIDS generation. I came from the generation where I lost all of my friends to AIDS, and that I have a adopted daughter who has AIDS. And I have so many variables in my life that make me accept life on life's terms. And so people don't understand, like, life can be fucking insane. And one day you can have a day where it's like, I fucking hate it. And the next day it's like, oh my God, so much shit has just been given to you that you're like, wow, I forgot about yesterday. And I think people think every day is supposed to be joyous and every day is supposed to be this amazing space and every day, and it's not true. So I think when you start to realize that life is up and down, life is sideways, life is this, but the most important thing is gratitude and the fact that you wake up every day and you get to make a difference in the world if you want to. And you don't have to be an angry person if you want to. And you don't have to be miserable, and you don't have to be spouting out shit to the world if you don't want to. So I think what I mean by that is I just learned that I've been given this deck of cards, and every day I shuffle those deck of cards, and sometimes I get a winning hand and sometimes I don't. And I think that's the message that the world needs to understand, and especially trans people. Stop making it so that's everybody else's problem. Your transition is not anybody else's space but your own, and stop making it the problem of the world, and figure out how you can navigate the world where the world will want to navigate with you.
I love that. Buck, this has been such a pleasure.
Right on. Thank you, my friend. It means a lot that you want to hear me.
Oh my God.
I hope your listeners.
I have been so excited to learn from you for this whole time I've been following you. And so it's been a real honor to talk with you today.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Thank you, my friend. Well, no, it's people like you who might not agree with everything I say, but you give me space to say shit, and you give me space to say, hey, wait a minute here. Not all trans people think that way. That's powerful. So I can't do it without you, and that's why people like me and you can actually make a difference in the world. So
I love that.
I appreciate you a lot.
And you know, to that end, like I don't need to agree with you about everything. Like, I don't care.
That's right.
I don't care.
Right on.
You know, I don't need you to agree with me about everything. I just don't care.
And like, how many friends do you have that agree with everything you say?
None.
Not me.
None.
Half my friends don't. That's right. That's right.
In fact, some of my favorite ones are the ones who will disagree with me and they're hilarious about it.
Excellent.
You know,
Excellent.
I love that.
Excellent. Love it.
And there you have it, Buck Angel. Buck, thank you so much for your time. I so enjoyed our conversation, and I do hope that our paths can cross in the real world sooner than later. Today's been absolutely delightful. My friends, I hope you enjoyed that show as much as I did. If you got something out of it, if you enjoyed today's show, share it with a friend. Let your friends know that the Soul Anarchist podcast is found on all the major podcasting apps. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and every other place that you find podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Buck and his work, you can go to buckangel.com. Or you can just visit the show notes over at soulanarchist.com, where you can also find links to Buck's work, links to subscribe to the show, and that link to the Audible offer that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. All right, my friends, let's wrap this up. You know, when you live life authentically on your own terms, like Buck does, such an amazing example of it, a couple things happen. You get to enjoy being in your own skin, enjoy being who you are, enjoy being in the life that you've been given. And your example silently gives other people around you permission to do the same thing. And that is a beautiful thing. And that, my friends, is one of the ways that we will leave the world a better place than we found it. All right, my friends, thanks for listening. Until next time.